Hello and welcome to the Fishing Guide Podcast. Man, we open up with some music. I tell you what, someone that I've known for a long time, Mike Bucca, is on the show. I'm pretty excited. So if you're watching the show on YouTube, I'm actually kind of looking at Mike too because you know, Mike doesn't have the greatest hearing. It's probably, maybe my wife's been yelling at you. That's why you don't have good hearing. But great to have you on the show, Mike.
Thank you.
Let's start with kind of the history of you making lures and where you made them at.
Okay. Over 15 years ago, I was a guide on Alatoona, which is based out of Atlanta. Tough fishery, one of the largest, busiest fisheries in the United States due to its proximity to Atlanta.
Right.
It's the busiest Corps of Engineer lake in the world because of the volume of near Atlanta. And I was struggling to catch the bigger fish. You know, I catch a couple 5-pound spots a year, and I said, there's got to be a way to catch the bigger ones because they're there. I knew they're there. Right. So I started, I figured I just removed, trying to figure out, well, if I went smaller, my fish is not going to get any bigger. Right. So what happens if I go bigger? And that's when I started experimenting, Back then, all of the swim baits were basically trout-based out of California. We didn't have any swim baits or shad swim baits back at the time. Right. So I started making my working trout baits and stuff, and I started catching fish on them. So I said, well, we need to do some shad swim baits. And at this time, I'm just trying to get my clients to catch more fish, quality fish. Right. I had no plans of going into this full time, this whole other wheel that I took. So I started doing that, and I started making some, my first bait was swim like a flounder. Right. They didn't have YouTube where you could show you how to make a bait and everything. So I'm self-taught, 100% self-taught. Wow. So I finally got something that worked, and I started catching some bigger fish. By no means did I slay them on Alatoona, but I became more consistent. And I was starting to see more and more big fish. And when you see more and more big fish, that's information that you can use, that you can build confidence on, that you can learn from, and you build on that. And that's basically how I got started. And I just started making I started off with the mantra of trout of the South, because that's what a gizzard shad and a threadfin is to what California is for trout. So that's when I started making the shad swim baits. I started guiding, and people were like hectic at first, but I started coming in with these big fish and doing my fishing reports, and people started booking trips, trying to learn, and it got to the point where guiding when homemade bait sleep, guiding when homemade bait sleep. People were buying them off my boat. I would be stopped at a gas station near the swim bait guy, and I'd cut it off my rod back then and just give it to them, say, hey, good, go at it. And then it got to the point where I couldn't do the guiding and the swim bait thing. And people were buying them, they were ordering them, asking me where they can get them, and I'm sitting here trying to guide and not making baits. Right. So at some point I had to make a decision that I said, yeah, okay, am I going to guide or am I going to make baits? And I said, well, let's try the bait thing. We can always come back to the guide thing. And 15 years later, here I am.
There you go. What a great story. So, and you are here right now, and we're actually at Redcrest at the expo. And actually, I saw a whole line of lures. That's correct. And so how many different swim baits do you have right now?
Just for retailers alone, we have over 42 different varieties, 42 different SKUs. It's to the point where we can't offer all of the baits that we make to the retailers because we can't keep up with those 42. Really? So, but we still need to stay fresh. So people will keep thinking about us that don't forget about us. We're still serving those 100+ retailers that we have. And but we still came up with some baits to make sure we're fresh. A lot of them are wanting those in the shop now. It's just it seems to be the baits were not made to be produced in mass quantities. Right. So it's just a tedious process. You can throw more people at it, you throw more money at it. It's just that you lose that hometown feel. And that's what I want to make sure that we keep is I don't want to get too big, but I just want to, be comfortable paced where we're serving the public and people are able to enjoy the bait. They're able to talk to me or anybody, and we're not so busy that we talk. So customer service is a big thing for me. I wanted to make sure I'm available. I'm at the shows and meeting people and hearing their stories and stuff. So that's the thing. You get too big, you kind of lose touch with everything, and that's what I'm trying not to do.
Right.
But
you don't make them in your garage anymore, though,
right.
do you? Like he probably.
Yeah.
When do you remember that first time, like when you got a new building and you're like, you walked down to your garage and went, "Oh, I don't do them here. Like I got to go. I have to drive to work."
Yeah. I mean, we started in my house. We had a spare bedroom in my house up in the second floor. I ruined the carpet of that. Wife kicked me out, says we need to get another house that has a basement and you can have your own fishing crap, is what she called it. And, so we went to the basement of this other house, and I ruined the floor of that. And it just happened about that time we had a water heater bust, and it flooded the entire basement. And my wife goes, "Well, the insurance paid for your mess because of the water heater bust." I said, "You need to get you a shop." Okay. So we got a shop in this huge building. For me, it was huge. I said, "I'll never need another building. This will last me lifetimes." 2 years later, we buy another building.
Wow.
So I'm done with buildings, you know. I wanted to have a storefront. That was my ultimate goal, is somebody that could come in and share the experience. It's like a destination.
Right.
I have it's got pallet wood walls. It's got Jack Daniel barrels. It's got custom.
So you have a storefront?
Yes, we do.
Where's that at?
It's in Ackworth, Georgia.
It is.
Where our shop is. We have the storefront in the front, and we have the actual shop in the back and in the loft.
How many miles from, say, Atlanta is that?
From where?
Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh gosh, less than 30.
Less than 30. Wow.
Yeah, we've got more swim baits than you saw out there to display. I couldn't bring them all. There's no way. So that's what we usually use to do the shows with. You know, we're already there, so why not have a storefront? You know, we've got a display case that shows our history. Some of the first baits that I've carved and how we progressed, and a lot of the baby Bull Shad 3D prints that we had when we did the deal with Catch Co.
Yeah.
We've got a map where people have visited. They get to punch in on the map. We've got a double-digit board. And then we do shop tours, you know. Everybody comes in if they want to do a shop.
Wow.
We have a 2,200-gallon test tank where we swim the baits.
Right.
And make tune them. And if customers want to come in there and learn something, yeah, we come in there and we show them some stuff and make them a better angler.
And you tune every bait before you sell it. Is that
What
right? You tune every bait before you sell it?
Most of them. Most of them. All the
glides
we do.
The big swim bait ones, you have to, don't you?
Yeah.
Just to
I mean,
make sure.
we make our molds do a lot of the work for us. As long as you do load the molds correctly, the bait should come out swimming good. But there are certain baits that we test everything from start to finish. And we do spot test on a lot of things as well. But most of our glides, most of our baits with lips are things that we test to make sure that they're tuned, that the customer shouldn't have to mess with anything.
Right.
And if something's not tuned, we do have a video online that show you how to retune it. You hit a trolling motor, hit a rock, or hit a boathouse or whatever.
Right.
You can retune your bait yourself.
If I had one, I threw it out, I would only throw it in big open water, Mike. And I'd only catch small fish.
Right.
I live on Beaver Lake, so it's not a problem catching big fish. Unless one of those stripers come up and annihilate it, probably. But what's your most popular swim bait that you sell?
The most popular is the very first bait we made still to this day is a 6-inch Bull Shad and the 5-inch Bull Shad. Those are our bread and butter. We always sell. You know, I keep them affordable. Most custom resin baits guys start out at $100+. These are $50-$60.
Right.
And you know, I want to make sure that I'm open to the grassroots of fishing. And that's kind of why we did the Catch Co deal, something $14.99, and they at least have one of my designs, and I have to spend $50-$60 or even $100+. So hopefully when they do the Catch Co bait and they catch fish on it, they remember the name, they'll come over to the resin side and get into the bigger stuff. And
so resin is what you're making the lures out of.
That's
so
correct.
You're pouring those. Yeah. They get poured. Is it two-part mold?
I'm sorry.
Two-part mold.
Two-part. Yes, sir. We make every mold in house. Everything we do is in house.
Wow.
We make our own tails. We make our own molds. Make our own jigs. We cut our own tails. That kind of stuff. And we make all of our molds. Silicone's expensive, so we have a lot of trade secrets in our molds. So help speed the process up, make it efficient, that kind of thing. So. Everything we do is in-house.
Tell us a little bit about the tails, because you have different tail styles and actually the materials construction that they're made with. Why do you make them different?
Very good question. especially it's all about swim, and realism. I try to make, if I can use the hairtail, I'll use it, but there's disadvantages and advantages of it. On a glide bait, a soft hairtail doesn't give you a wider glide than a lot of the harder urethane tails do.
Yeah.
Usually you want to use a hard urethane if you want a wide glide, what we call a cover glide. And a cover glide is a bait that you can steer up under docks and stuff. You can half step it. So that's what that hard urethane tail does. And then we have silicone tails that are more floppy, and they'll give you those cuts that you want. And they, both have a different look. The hair tail is indestructible. The other ones, a little bit more. You need to manage them and make sure that there's spares and stuff for them. But it just depends on the bait. Some are just more effective on designs than others.
I see. I see. So you had lots of color patterns. And I'm cheating because I actually went over to your booth and looked at some of this stuff, and I actually got to meet someone who's painting them.
That's
correct. She paints your lures.
Yeah.
Fantastic. She says she loves to do it. How do you come up with these color patterns, or does she come up with the color patterns? Let's say her name.
Well, that's a very good question. When I brought Jen overboard, she moved here from Arkansas to come paint for me. I'm very fortunate to have her.
Right.
And she was mostly a crankbait painter at the time.
Right.
Coach Dog, Fire Tiger, and that's not what swim baits are about. I had to kind of mold her a little bit on the realism part. And, give her pictures. If you give her pictures, she can give you what she wants.
Wow.
What you want. And there's a lot to learn in that transition from being a crankbait painter to being a swim bait painter, because a lot of the guys want that realism, they want that effect, the flip flop, they want the race car effect, the wow factor, and that's what we try to do with that. We also try to match the hatch. That's one thing that we try to do. I give her a perch, or give her a trout, or give her a threadfin. Threadfin is extremely hard to paint because it looks like one thing one way, and you move it the other way, it looks like a completely different bait. It's purple, green, pink hues, and olive green and stuff. So it's a challenge, But that's one thing I've challenged Jen is, we go to bait shops and stuff, and we look at the threadfin, we take pictures of them, we do the herring, we catch yellow perch. She's a photographer too, so she takes these pictures and she matches them and say,
I see.
If I have any complaints with it, this is what it looks like. You're right. We go back and forth a lot, but we have a lot of fun with it.
So if you could give angler 3 tips on fishing your baits to catch more fish, what would those 3 tips be?
Very good question. I like that question a lot. The biggest thing is don't be scared to learn new tricks.
Okay.
I know people look at these baits and they say, wow, these are big. But keep in mind, this is what bass eat every day. They eat bluegill. They eat threadfin. They eat gizzard shad. These baits swim like a threadfin, like a bluegill, and like a yellow perch, and like a crappie. So there's no spinnerbait. It doesn't look like a spinnerbait. It doesn't look like a worm.
Right.
There's no trickery here, So that should build ultimate confidence in you that you're trying to feed a fish as most lifelike bait as you possibly can. But start small is my first tip.
Okay.
And when you learn and you start to catch fish, gravitate to something bigger and bigger and bigger, and your catch sizes will increase. You'll start to see bigger fish follow your baits, and you'll get that confidence to start throwing them more. So another tip is what I tell a lot of people, especially with my bull shad, when they're starting out, throw it out there and kind of reel it up near the surface, almost like a V, or maybe just below it. You should be able to see that bait coming at you. Use a high-speed reel, and I'm not saying do this. I'm just saying keep it up, keep it going.
Right.
You need to make that fish react. And what that speed does is it makes it traps that bait up at the surface so that the fish can trap it at the surface. The fish has nowhere to go. If it comes up, that fish knows it has to come back down.
Right.
If you're in the middle of the water column and you're burning it, he knows he's going to have to chase. He doesn't know that it's not going to go up and down, but he's more apt to trap it on that surface. It's creating a funnel for that fish to trap it on the surface. Okay. So those are the tips that I would use, Keep it simple.
More? You got one more?
Good more.
Oh.
Don't overthink.
You probably got a bunch.
No, that's okay. That's
all right.
Don't overthink things.
Okay.
Don't overthink it. Take the bait. Don't worry about color. Just throw it.
Okay.
Get familiar with it. And my advice always has been is if you're happy with what you've always been catching, keep doing that. But if you want to try something different and try to catch bigger fish, this is an opportunity for you to do that, you know.
All right.
You don't have to buy a $50 bait. You could start off with some of the commercial ones. A lot of commercial baits are starting to come off from the things that we've done with the custom side of things. I think in ACAS this year, you'll start seeing that bust out. That'll be one of the big trends that are coming out. More commercial guys getting into the swim bait game and making them more available to the everyday consumer at a reasonable price.
One last thing we got to touch on is some swim baits sink, some swim baits, they're on top, the surface. How do you know which one to grab? Which one are you going to fish?
Well, it's kind of like compare it to your conventional fish. When do you use a topwater and when do you use a crankbait? When do you use a spinnerbait? You have to use that same logic. You know, when you use those other baits, you know, if it's springtime and you're looking at 65-degree water, topwater is pretty good. But I promise you, if you're catching them on topwater, put the topwater down and throw a swim bait, and you will catch them. Because that is a telltale sign that the swim bait bite is on.
Oh.
You know, and by offering that bigger presentation, you just might catch the fish of a lifetime if you do that. So that's my another tip that I can give you for
I know you got a
fishing.
bunch. I know you got a bunch.
Yeah, I do.
But that way, I think. So, what's the biggest bass you've ever caught on one of your lures?
10 pounds and 11 ounce, 10 pounds even. 10 pounds.
10 pounds
The jig
even.
was my 10 and 11, my personal bass, but 10 pounds. I've caught 2 of them on it.
2
Two were one was in Mexico and one was here in the States.
There you go.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome. That takes us to Tackle Time. Tackle Time is sponsored by Pico Lures. Pico Lures, of course, has a whole line of hard and soft baits. They don't have big swim baits. You got to go to Mike to get big swim baits, but it does have conventional size, I'm going to say, crankbaits and soft plastics for crappie fishing, jig heads, scope eye jig heads, very popular because they are shaped like aspirin, like an aspirin head, so it really shows up on your live scope or your active target. So you can check all their stuff out at picolures.com. Mike, if they want to go to your store or if they want to buy one of your lures, where would they do that at?
They can buy one of our lures at www.bullshad.com. Pretty easy to remember. Right now, we close the shop for show season. One show season because I've got 3 shows in a row sometimes. So we're a little bit of a mess there. But after show season, we usually announce on our Facebook page, on our Instagram page, and also on some of the popular swim bait forums on Facebook when we will reopen. And you're more than welcome to come out there and see what we have. We have everything. We have the catch cup baits. We have the bull shad rod. We have our storage boxes that we help design with Lakewood. And then, of course, we have baits until you can't see straight.
Well, that sounds good. Appreciate it. Like I always like to end the show, make sure you keep your hook sharp and your lures in the water.